Alright, so I just finished watching the Saban's Power Rangers movie, and I am so excited about it. I'm like really hyped. I'm still kind of high from watching the movie from the excitement. I finally was able to see it because out here in Japan, we don't get the movie until next month in July. And of course, it came back out in the States several months ago. And I'm like, okay, I really support this franchise. I want to financially support it. I'm not going to do the whole thing with illegally watching it on some website, even though people offered that to me. I'm like, no, I love the Power Rangers franchise way too much to do that, and I'm so glad I waited. It was definitely worth the wait. First of all, the movie was not perfect. There were a couple of issues I had. I'll say the bad things first. So one, the pacing was a little bit, like we only got to see them transform for kind of the not later half, but really late in the movie. So that was one thing I wasn't too big of a fan on, but it kind of worked with the pacing of a typical episode, so that was okay. Another thing was kind of the thing that brought them together. There are going to be slight spoilers in this review, but like the thing that happened to Billy, if you have seen the movie, you know what happens. No, screw it. We're gonna do spoilers. But no, when that moment when Billy died, well, when he died basically, um, that being the thing that brought everyone together, I thought that was a little much, but I still enjoyed it. Well, not really enjoyed it. I didn't like seeing my favorite character die, but I still like. I don't know how to describe the feeling I had about that. I didn't like that they had to kill him off. I'm like, they could have just left him half dead or something like that, but it did send them in motion towards ultimately what was the climax of the movie. Um, Another thing I wasn't too big of a fan of, well, some of the dramatics. Oh, something that kind of didn't make sense. I'm like, it was something that they did in the TV show too, but it's like, do the parents not notice that their kids are gone? I mean, in the Power Rangers comics, they actually cover this. Like, if you read the Power Rangers comics made by DC and wait, did DC make them? Yeah, they do make the Justice League one. Like, they show Zack having issues with his parents and stuff. But it just that was something that kind of created a gap. Is like, why don't the parents worry too much about where their kids are, why their kids are missing, and all of that? But other than those two things, I think other than that, I just loved the movie. I loved everything else about it. The soundtrack was absolutely amazing. When they had the part with the Zords running and they had Go Go Power Rangers playing in the background, I loved that. I love the humor they had in the movie. I love the action scenes. Oh, that was another thing I wish they had a little bit more of was a few more, scenes with them in action in the suits. But like I said, what they did for that was really good. Also, that little perilous scene before the creation of the Megazord, that was necessary to move the plot along, but it was just kind of a little cliche, but we'll go with that. We'll go with that. It was still an exciting scene. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, well, the edge of my seat from my computer watching it on iTunes. Um, Another thing that I really enjoyed about the movie was, the well, like I said, the humor, but they had subtle humor and jabs at things that I'm sure people would have. They knew people were gonna poke fun at, which is the whole Spider-Man thing. Like, oh, we're waking up and we suddenly have these superpowers and the six pack. That's kind of a ode to Spider-Man. The Iron Man idea, like their suits do look like Iron Man. That was another thing that they had, and the whole hey, the Zords kind of look like Transformers a bit. Uh, where the part where Jason like kicks that yellow car with his T Rex Zord, and it's like, oh, sorry, Bumblebee. I love that part too. Let's see. I love the character development, like how they built up the characters, how they developed them, how they gave them kind of a backstory, made us fall in love with the characters again in a different way because well they're not they wanted us to establish these are not the same Rangers you grew up with, but it is a different interpretation of them. We're just kind of mixing them in the mold to where they fit into a more modern situation, and we're changing up their diversity a bit. Like for example, let's mix the races around somewhat. They did change the personalities of the characters a bit. Like Trini's a little bit more rebellious, or Trinidad. Trini's a little bit more rebellious. Kim is a typical cheerleader. Jason has a few anger issues. Billy, I love what they did with Billy though. Like Billy has autism. I like that they did that, but they didn't make it a central focus in everything. They just showed, okay, it does help him as his character develops. It shows why he does, he has some issues making friends and things, but I don't know. They just handled it so well. They handled it very well. Okay, I loved Alpha's character. The way they handled Alpha was, um, it was different. It wasn't the same Alpha we knew, the same Alpha we grew up with, but he was still, he was still an interesting character. He was nice. It actually made me wonder something about. Remember, they're super strong. They can break concrete. Yeah, Alpha is able, when he meets up with them, he's able to toss them around, like toss them and drag them any which way he wants to go. So that's just saying something about how powerful Alpha is. But I'm sure they're not really going to utilize that. But actually, they did make his character like, okay, he actually has some physical capabilities. Alpha was the one training them in how to fight against Putty. What another thing about this movie, they definitely put on the whole teenagers with attitude factor in this, because every one of them has some sort of attitude, except for maybe Billy. But all of them seem to have some sort of attitude problem in some way, but they're all at their core good-natured people, and that's something that we constantly see throughout the entire movie, which I loved. Like Kim, she's a teenager. She did something that a lot of teenagers typically do, which is they may be a nice person, something happens, and they take a joke too far, and it backfires on them, and they realize, oh, this was a terrible thing that I did, and it was eating away at her. So that was something towards character development that I liked. And also, I liked that they took out that kiss we saw in the previews. I don't know if it's because I missed it, but I did not see it at all. And I'm glad they did not create a romance between Jason and Kimberly. I guess they might have stuck that in the trailer just to get people a little bit more interested, but it was not anything romantic going on between them. That's good. It's really hard to say. Like, this movie would belong to all the Rangers, but I felt like Billy and Jason were the two biggest main characters. Like, they're the first two Rangers that were introduced to, on an in-depth point. Well, Kimberly as well, but like Billy and Jason tended to have the most character development, or most bringing forward as characters. And Billy was the one who I think pushed Jason to being more of a leader with the team. So that ultimately is how the movie developed towards that. Now, the little thing that they had at the end about Tommy Oliver coming in, I'm really curious to see if that's going to guarantee a sequel, because this movie made a lot of money. It was really popular. It doesn't come out here in Japan until next month, so we're gonna see how popular it is internationally. But it's I can't really say for sure. It definitely has a huge fan base in the States, so it's safe there. I think they are going to release a sequel, make that work out. What the villain is, I don't know. They introduced the Zeo Crystal. I don't know if the next villain is going to be Lord Zed, if they're going to bring Rita back because of the whole green crystal thing. I don't know if they're just going to go ahead and skip ahead to the Zeo villains, which I think would be a bad decision, to be honest. But we'll see. We're just going to wait and see how things play out. Either way, I enjoyed the movie so much. The soundtrack made it. Like, those parts where they're just, like, in their power suits and just play this epic music, it made me feel so good. Like, my inner child is so happy right now. And of course, you see I'm wearing the Power Rangers shirt too. I had to put it on just to watch this movie, just because it was a special occasion. So, yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for listening to me ramble on about, how I felt about this movie. Keep on the lookout for my reviews of other things like Super Sentai and Kamen Rider, and other videos about my experiences in Japan. Until then, be blessed, and go see this movie if you haven't seen it already. Wait, why are you watching this video if you haven't seen it? Go watch it again. Alright.